Simpson Desert in Central Australia is an extremely vast, inhospitable and desolate wasteland. The sort of area where if something were to go wrong with your vehicle, you'd really only have two choices to survive. The first, of course, is to perish. But the second choice is to ask your mate with his Nissan Patrol to help tow you out. And I know exactly which one I'd be choosing. Now, when I was asked whether or not I wanted to go on a journey to cross this wasteland, I knew full well that I needed a vehicle that was extremely well put together, reliable and exceedingly capable. The sort of vehicle where you could throw anything at it and it would just keep on cruising. And luckily for me, that exact vehicle fell straight into my lap. This is Duncan, my HZJ105 Toyota Land-Cruiser powered by the almighty 1.8Z naturally aspirated diesel engine. Now the thing about this car is that not only was it a mine's car, not only was it a farmer's vehicle, but this exact car actually went through the recent 2022 Lismore floods right up to the roof. And I knew full well that if this car could survive the biggest flood of the last century, it could survive anything. And now that I had the perfect vehicle and it was fully prepped and ready to go, the plan was set. We'd be crossing the Simo via the Flinders Ranges, going up the Oodnadatta Track to Finke, watching the desert race, and then crossing from west to east. Boys and girls, day 3 of our epic off-road adventure, and I'll start off by saying that Duncan is still running like an absolute Swiss watch. It's done pretty well. We've done a fair few Ks, and here we go. Here's a group in its majesty. Of course, Scotty, he's got his Nissan Patrol coily ute, Dan with his Pajero Sport, which is pretty fresh, Shorty Patrol, that's Ash's, Jared with his GU, of course Duncan, Ian with his Jeep, which is an absolute ripper of a machine, and Davo the mechanical wizard with his 76 series, who's just popped his bonnet. What's wrong, Dave?
Check the wheels.
Checking the fluids. What a better place to do that than the Silverton Hotel car park where we find ourselves today. This is of course where the Mad Max Museum is and the area where they've done a lot of the filming. So there's a few bits and bobs to see, but unfortunately today is a Saturday, so a lot of the stuff's closed. I suppose this is the main reason you actually come to Silverton, to see the Mad Max Museum. Hey Brondon.
What'd you say?
Nothing of importance really, but check out this thick rig with this fully thick hectic turbo on it. Oh yeah. It's a Mitsubishi turbo, which means that essentially the turbo is going to blow up. Alright, let's go in. Oh, Monza front end. Oh bro, I'm literally shaking with excitement. Look at that, it's a XB Monza front end on the... yeah, that's sick. Oh, look at this. How much that'd be worth? Just not as a prop car or nothing, but just as a...
tribute car.
As a XB. So they got 2 coupes here. Whoa, it's a Landau.
So we've left Silverton, we've taken some of the back roads down to the Flinders Ranges, which we are approaching right now, all of which have been dirt roads. And I've got to say, the dust is terrible, but when you get the light just in the right spot, you've got a haze of dust in front of you, the Flinders Ranges over to the left there, it's just beautiful. That said, Duncan is definitely not dustproof, and I'm probably going to end up with silicosis or something, but it's all going to have been worth it just for this magnificent view.
So we're in the Flinders Ranges all of yesterday, but unfortunately last night it rained something fierce. Brondon's coming along, he's looking dense.
Wait, notice how every problem so far has been from a patrol?
I was going to say that. Anyway, because it rained so hard last night, we can no longer go to Arkaroola, which is where we were planning to go next. We're going to be heading down to Port Augusta, which is the most beautiful town in South Australia.
You want to vlogging now?
No, well, I'm doing a video, and you know everyone.
Yeah,
keeps...
you're like filming it like a vlog.
Well, anyway, on the way to Port Augusta, the Nissan Patrol has developed a death wobble similar to a Jeep, but interestingly, it's not the Jeep. Of course, it's a panhard rod bush, and I think we're attempting to put a new one in it on the side of the road, which is going to be spectacular.
Need a 10 mil.
Who brings a whole panhard rod?
I was just trying to work it out.
Scotty! Good on you, mate.
What a man.
You're a top
I like that. How are we going to change a bush? And I was just like, why do we need to change a bush?
It must be a patrol thing. What sort of spare parts should I take? A whole panhard rod. After fixing the Nissan Patrol, we travelled to the greatest town in South Australia, which is of course Port Augusta. When we got there, we tried to leave that place as quickly as possible. But not before Pete had to charge his Nissan Patrol off Dave's Land-Cruiser because his alternator had kicked the bucket.
Oh, I missed it.
What? After which we would take the Outback Highway up to Maree, where the infamous Oodnadatta Track would start, and I've got to say the track was almost as hard as it is to pronounce.
What do you reckon of Duncan? It's a bit slow. You're not wrong.
Guys are on, right? What a place to break down. Because the Shorty Patrol's alternator's not working, there's a threshold voltage preset into the ECU that shuts it off at, and I think it's set at 11.2, so it's reached that threshold voltage and shut off. And what a magnificent place to do so. Looks like Brendan's off to
See you, Brendan.
do some business. So I don't know what the plan is here. I think we're going to do a battery swap or something to keep it going.
Day 9, and it's flaming cold. I think it must have got down to negative something. Well, it had to have, because there was ice all over the roof, or the black bit of the rooftop tent, and me little fingies are freezing something fierce. Now, what the plan is today, I think we're going on to Finke. We're going to go check out the Geological Centre of Australia, and part of the gang is going to go into Alice Springs to pick up a new alternator for the short wheelbase patrol. So what they're doing is giving it as much charge as physically possible using the ute, and then they're going to take the ute into Alice Springs. Which reminds me, I've got to get a new fuel filter, so I might ask them for that as well. One of the funnest parts of the entire trip was the road from the Lambert Center turnoff to the Lambert Center post, which is of course the Geological Centre of Australia. Now this road was approximately 12 kilometres long, full of corrugations, heaps of sand, with lots of little twists and turns and offshoots, which ultimately led to the same place. Needless to say, I was probably pushing Duncan a little bit on the hard side, especially considering it's a naturally aspirated 1.8Z. But sometimes you just got to pretend that your car is an Audi Quattro and have a little bit of fun. And that I was, because I was having a ball of a time, which can be heard from my childish giggles.
Oh man, this is way too bad. Stop it, I'm going right.
Josh,
Oh, left hand bend it. That's right, guys.
Who says shenanigans don't pay off? Because I was all sweet, but Pete unfortunately copped a puncture in one of his nice new tyres. However, this was quickly fixed with one of those little noodle plugs.
Oh no, Pete, your leg's gone.
They're good, those things, eh?
Keep that.
Where is he? Okay, that souvenir. That is so sharp, isn't it?
Just goes to show.
Didn't stand on it.
We camped at Lambert Center for a night where we fruitlessly put a new alternator in the short wheelbase patrol, which was unfortunately having charging issues. From there we went on to Finke to watch the Simpson Desert race. Essentially this is a 230 kilometre race from Alice Springs to Finke, which is a small town east of Alice. You can camp anywhere along the track as long as you're 30 metres back from it, and essentially you sit there and watch Toby Price and a few other people race their cars and or motorbikes really fast along a dirt track. It's quite cool.
Here you going, Pop.
Yeah, go.
Good. Brendan. How you going? Don't take a vlog of me on the phone in the desert, man. It makes me look bad. It's going in my vlog. It's going in your vlog. Hey guys, Steve Lanchester here. Welcome, this is my vlog. Welcome to the Simpson Desert race. an helicopter.
You see on the side, that just said Toby fly.
Boy, he's getting low. Holy dollies.
The chopper.
From Finke, we jotted off to Mount Dare, which is a small sort of pub thing, which is right on the edge of the desert. This is where we stocked up on a lot of essential liquids. And from Mount Dare, it was on. We were going to be doing the bit that I've been prepping for almost a year, and is one of the reasons I even bought Duncan in the first place. We'd be finally tackling the Simpson Desert, and needless to say, the apprehension was dense. Would Duncan have enough power to crest the dunes? Would Duncan break down? Would we have to fix the Jeep in the middle of the desert? These were all questions that really needed answering, and the only way to do that was to tackle it head on. But in the meantime, the track from Mount Dare to Dalhousie Springs was pretty spectacular. After that cool little drone montage, I thought it was only right to pull over and have a celebratory stop.
She made it, boys.
That's right, Duncan had actually made it to the Simo, which I've got to say I was fairly proud of at the time. That night we found the perfect campsite where we decided to pitch the perfect camp.
So we're about 140 k's down the French line of the Simpson Desert. I thought it'd be an awesome idea to have a bit of a run through of all the modifications that I've actually done on Duncan, because I didn't really give any more, you know, updates as to what I've done to it since the last video. So here you go. So starting at the front of the car, got the fully hectic sand flag, which is a must when you're in the Simpson. It's actually a requirement. Duncan's front end's looking pretty schmutzed up. I might have to clean that number plate off, so it's no good. But the only running repair that I've had to do on it thus far is this indicator popped out. The screws actually undone themselves and came out, so I've just zip tied them in. And as you can tell, I've got heaps of pride in my workmanship because I've totally snipped off the tails of those zip ties. This is where all the magic happens. Got the VMS up on the dash, Sommer Lovine's hat for extra Land-Cruiser street cred. Cup holders, once again, absolute luxury for a Land-Cruiser. And the all-important Mount Dare bar mat. which of course is going straight on the dash. It's going straight on the dash. Anyway, I'll sort that out later. As for the top of the vehicle, the King's $400 rooftop tent, it's doing all right. Look, I've got to be dead honest, I'm not a huge fan of them. Like, it was the right price, but the moment any sort of wind picks up, the thing starts flapping like nothing else. You get a terrible night's sleep and you wake up real mad the next day, or at least until I get a coffee in me. Got the side awning, which probably wasn't on the car last time I made a video. That's a Gunya Outdoors Special, which is made in Australia, and I've got to say it is one of the best side awnings I've ever used. It's not as fancy as these newfangled wraparound awnings, but the thing is, this thing actually comes out 3 meters, which is pretty massive. It's 2.5 long by 3 meters out, and it makes a really big difference. Just got your standard huge mess that generally happens when you're on a big trip like this. Spare tent just in case the roof top tent poops itself, which is highly probable because everything's made in China these days. Also got the 100 and something watt King solar panel, which is pretty cool considering the price of it. Toolkit, so all me mates who own Nissan Patrols have easy access to my tools, as it seems. As for the back here, the way I designed it was so that when the rooftop folds out, it kind of makes a little cubby hole in here for me. All our clothes are in these bad boys, these little 25 litre tubs. They work really well because you can stack stuff on top. Just your gas stove. Bought this tawny port at a servo on the side of the road, and I've got to say, it is probably one of the best things I've ever drank in my life. Even though it looks like it's a 25 W60 oil drum. King's table, goes schmicko. These things here, they're pegs. They're really good for rooftop tent anti-flap devices. And other than that, got a 600 watt inverter, which I am yet to use because, as it turns out, when you go camping, you don't have a lot of 240 volt stuff. Solar input, 12 volt output for the compressor. Got the water tank filled just there, tucked up real schmick. And this is my favourite part of the entire build. This is my tap. That's where my water comes out. So I've got a water tank of some unspecified capacity. It could be 60 litres, could be 80 litres. I just do not know because I pinched it off Dad's camper trailer, sorry. This is a switch. That's the master switch. Turn on the water pump, which is inside the quarter panel there. And then it goes, which is cool as heck. Now, I've got a bit of a thing for not drilling holes in bumpers, and also because 100 series are really round, there's just nowhere to put a tap nicely. So I decided to take out one of the reflectors from the rear bar and just drilled a hole and made up a little metal plate to put it in. That was a waste of water. But anyway, I'll turn that off. Boop, boop. This is my I've gone places window, which tells me where I've gone. So thus far I've gone to Silverton, Maree, Mount Dare, Mad Max Museum, and the Pink Roadhouse on the Oodnadatta Track, which is really cool, and it makes the 100 series look like the ultimate boomer mobile. But Duncan's doing good. Thoroughly enjoying it. Top rig.
The next day we continued on into the desert, and slightly saddened by the fact that we couldn't tackle Big Red due to the fact that the desert was closed at the eastern end, we decided to tackle every difficult dune we could find. And I've got to say, a lot of the other vehicles made it look fairly easy because they've got things like turbos and, you know, twin cam petrol engines and etc, etc. But it was Duncan's turn, and I was pretty optimistic knowing that I have 96 full kilowasps of naturally aspirated 1.8Z power, and I thought I was going to show them up.
Duncan.
No matter how hard I tried, I just could not get Duncan to the top of that dune. I just didn't have enough power. And after having brought shame upon myself, the vehicle and my entire family, I thought it was best to leave this dune to the more capable vehicles. This, however, gave me some time to reflect upon the important things, such as whether I should buy a Barra motor or go for a 1HD FTE swap.
That is the hardest I've ever heard that thing rev.
And after a huge day of finding out just how far a 1HZ will rev to, it was time to find a campsite. This would become the most easterly point of the desert we'd be able to reach. Luckily enough for us, we reached the campsite at Lake Tamblyn, which is of course right beside a huge salt lake in the middle of nowhere. And I've got to say, this made for a picturesque location to pitch up a tent. The next day we pointed the convoy west again, and this would become the most hectic day of four-wheel driving in the entire trip, purely because the dunes are far steeper on the eastern side. The previous night, however, I'd done a bit of investigating into Duncan's power issues and found that the bottom of my fuel filter was allowing air into the fuel lines and causing Duncan to misfire. Luckily enough for me, I'd gotten some of the team members to grab a fuel filter from Alice Springs, which is a Z169. This essentially does away with the water trap and gets rid of the sensor altogether. And I've got to say that, in conjunction with some lower tyre pressures, meant that Duncan was a changed vehicle.
Go Duncan.
say that Duncan was a changed vehicle, I really mean that at least this time it was making it to the top of some of these dunes. Davo, on the other hand, was driving down the New England highway, thong slapping his way up to the crest of every single dune. As were most of the group, to be honest. With a lot of big dunes under Duncan's belt, it was time to take on the dune that I couldn't make it up the day prior. And it was starting to become a bit of a spectacle to watch Duncan make it to the top of the dunes because it was a hard slog and very fun to watch. In amongst all the fun and games, Pete found himself in a bit of a predicament, being precariously placed on the side of a dune. He somehow managed to do this whilst I didn't have a single camera running on it, so I didn't actually catch it happening. And it seems to have stemmed from a slight misjudgment whilst entering the dune, which meant that his front right-hand wheel caught the bank and he thus kind of drove up it. Luckily enough for him, it didn't end up on its side, which kind of, would have been a bit of a downer. With a slight winch from Jared, Pete found himself heading in the right direction. And thus the only recovery of the entire trip was performed. And just for the record, it was a Nissan. Nice little bush camp on the side of the French line saw our last night in the Simpson Desert, and from that point on it was pretty smooth sailing. Our next destination was to be Inaminka, where we'd see the famous Burke and Wills dig tree, but along the way we stopped in at Dalhousie Springs and of course the Dalhousie Ruins, which is an awesome set of ruins in the middle of absolutely nowhere.
Nails need clipping. He hasn't done much work on bitumen, has he?
It's at this point in the trip where you're approaching civilization that you just know that the end of the trip is coming soon. And I've got to say, it's really depressing, especially when you've had such an awesome trip as this one was. And it wasn't only the spectacular places that we went and seen, but it was the group of mates that we went along with that really topped this off. The camaraderie, the radio banter, the jokes, and that in conjunction with the wide array of vehicles that we took along with us, from short to long, old to new, from schmicko to, in Duncan's case, a massive pile of crap, just really sprinkled a little bit of zest on top of this trip as well, because we were practically just waiting for the next car to break down and just wondering who was it gonna be. And the funny thing is that it wasn't ever Duncan. Other than the fact that I had a bit of a fuel filter issue, Duncan went great guns. And for a 7,200 kilometre trip from the east coast of Australia to the centre of Australia and back again, I reckon that's doing pretty good. The thing is, a lot of blood, sweat and tears have gone into getting all of these vehicles ready for this huge trip that you sort of become a bit emotionally attached to them. And that said, Duncan's going to be sticking around for a long time to come. Whether or not it keeps the 18Z or not, I have no idea. But that said, I will definitely be doing another trip in this dirty old rig. Where it's going to be, I have no idea. But you'll catch me next time on the next episode of Full Bore.